I woke up to the feeling that I wasn't alone. The room was dark and silent, except for the slow, steady sound of someone breathing much too close. It was the last weekend before school started, and I was at my best friend Hannah's house for one final summer sleepover. There were 6 of us, sprawled across the carpet in our sleeping bags, surrounded by soda cans and half-finished bowls of popcorn. We'd stayed up late watching scary movies until one by one, everyone drifted off. I must have fallen asleep too, because when I opened my eyes again, the TV was off and the room was drenched in quiet. That's when I noticed it. Across the room, just beyond the glow of the street light slipping through the curtains, someone was sitting upright. Not in a chair, not in a sleeping bag, just cross-legged on the floor, perfectly still. At first, I thought it was one of the girls, maybe playing a prank. But the longer I stared, the more wrong it felt. The figure didn't shift, didn't blink, didn't breathe the way you'd expect. I whispered Hannah's name, but she was snoring softly beside me. I told myself it had to be a pile of blankets, a trick of the light. Still, every hair on my body stood up when I realized the figure was facing me directly, watching me. I pulled the edge of my sleeping bag up to my chin and tried to close my eyes, but the sense of being studied was unbearable. Finally, I sat up to whisper again, and froze. The figure had moved. It was closer now, still sitting cross-legged, its head tilted just slightly like it was curious. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My throat locked up as my eyes darted to the others, still sleeping, completely unaware. I squeezed my eyes shut and prayed for morning. When sunlight finally poured in, the spot where it had been sitting was empty. Everyone else woke up groggy, laughing about the movies, while I stared at the floor, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. But later, as I rolled up my sleeping bag, I noticed something carved into the wooden floor beneath where I had been lying. Just 4 words scratched deep into the wood. See you next year. The pool lights went out for just 3 seconds. When they came back on, I wasn't alone anymore. It was late August, and I was squeezing in one last night swim before school started again. My neighborhood pool stayed open until midnight, but most nights it was empty after dark. I loved having it to myself. The cool water, the soft hum of the filter, the glow of the lights shimmering beneath the surface. That night, everything felt calm, almost too calm. The air was still, and the only sound was my splashing as I floated on my back, staring up at the stars. Then, without warning, the pool lights flickered and shut off, plunging everything into complete darkness. I froze. The silence felt heavier without the comforting glow. The water around me seemed endless, black and cold. My first thought was that the power had tripped, but before I could even swim to the edge, the lights blinked back on. And that's when I saw it. A figure was floating at the far end of the pool, motionless, face down. My chest tightened. I hadn't heard anyone dive in, hadn't seen a ripple. For a moment I thought someone was drowning. I pushed myself toward them, but as I drew closer, I noticed something that stopped me dead. The body wasn't sinking or moving with the water. It was perfectly still, as if it were just lying there on a solid floor. I backed away slowly, heart pounding, when the lights flickered again. Darkness swallowed me, and I thrashed toward the ladder, my hands slick against the wet metal rungs. The lights buzzed back on a second later, and my stomach dropped. The figure was gone. I scrambled out of the pool, dripping and shivering, scanning every corner of the deck. There was nothing. No wet footprints, no sound of anyone leaving. Just me. the water rippling from my panic, and the faint echo of something I couldn't explain. I never swam there again at night, because I can't shake the thought that whatever I saw that night, it hadn't been trying to drown. It had been waiting. I could hear footsteps in the corn, always a few paces behind me, no matter how fast I pedaled. It was the last evening before school started, and I was riding my bike home from a friend's house. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky orange, and the dirt road that cut between the cornfields stretched out in front of me like a tunnel. The stalks on either side were tall, swaying gently in the breeze. I'd ridden that path dozens of times before, but that night it felt different, quieter. Halfway through the stretch, I heard it, the crunch of heavy steps on dry husks coming from inside the corn. At first, I thought it was just an animal, but then the footsteps matched my pace. When I slowed, they slowed. When I pedaled harder, they quickened too. Always close, but never visible. My chest tightened as I glanced over my shoulder. Nothing but endless green stalks shifting in the fading light. I gripped the handlebars tighter and pedaled harder, the chain clanking as my legs burned. The footsteps grew quicker, keeping pace. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A figure, tall and thin, moving through the rows with unnatural ease, its head just visible above the corn. I didn't look directly at it. I couldn't, but I caught the shape. Hunched shoulders, arms too long, keeping stride with me as if it had been waiting. The path ahead suddenly felt endless. My heart pounded in my throat as I leaned into the pedals, desperate to reach the end of the road. For a moment, the footsteps vanished. I dared to glance to my right. The stalks were perfectly still, empty. I finally burst out of the field-lined path and into the open road, my house just a few blocks away. I didn't stop pedaling until I was inside, the door locked behind me, my lungs burning. Later that night, I looked out my bedroom window toward the cornfield in the distance. In the pale moonlight, just before the rows disappeared into shadow, I saw something standing at the edge, still, waiting.